So yeah, for under $20, this controller is working way better than I thought it would. Actually kind of impressed here. Hey, what's going on everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at a really inexpensive telescopic controller for your Android device. Now when it comes down to it, there are quite a lot of controllers on the market right now that'll work with your Android phone or your tablet, but a lot of them do get quite expensive. Now one that I would personally recommend is just something you might already have. A PS4, PS5, or an Xbox One controller, and you can connect it over Bluetooth and pick up a really cheap mount to kind of mount your phone right in the top. But I'm a huge fan of these telescopic controllers, otherwise known as stretchy controllers, and recently I came across these on AliExpress for $15. Now I've actually seen these from $15 to $25 depending on where you buy it. The most expensive I've seen is on Amazon for $25, and they usually have a coupon sitting there for around $3 off. But I went ahead and purchased one to see if it would be worth picking up for under $20. I mean, some of these controllers on the market right now go anywhere from $50 up to $120. And a lot of people just kind of want to get a controller that'll work with some of their favorite games on Android, maybe some emulation. They're not looking for super high-end stuff, and I'm not expecting a super high-end controller with this one here, given the price point. Now they do offer this in several different colors. You can pick it up in pink, white, gray. They've got a black and a white version. I went with their blue version. It's a little less blue than they showed in the product image, but this does have backlit buttons. And one thing straight off the bat that I'm not a huge fan of is the lack of a real D-pad. We've got these separated buttons over here for the D-pad. So when it comes to fighting games, you're probably going to be better off using the analog stick, but we will give it a test by the end of the video. Not a super bad looking controller, and like I mentioned, they do offer different color variants, so if you're not into this blue and yellow scheme here, they do have you covered. Obviously, the whole unit is constructed of plastic, and it does feel like a cheaper controller. I mean, it's pretty light. It's using Bluetooth 5 to connect to your device, and with this video, I can't stress this enough. I paid $15 shipped to the door from AliExpress for this controller here. You cannot compare this to something like the Razer Kishi V2 coming in at $99. But for a controller under 20 bucks, it's not looking bad so far. Another thing this controller is lacking is analog triggers, so basically we're just going to have on and off with the trigger buttons. Now there are a couple different ways to connect this to your Android device. I mean, obviously we're going to be using Bluetooth, but there's a couple different modes. We can go with D input mode, which does work with some native Android games, or we could set it up for X input mode. That way our device will detect this as an Xbox controller, and we can actually use this with games like Apex Legends and Call of Duty Mobile without any kind of third-party app. So the reason they call these telescopic or stretchy controllers is because obviously your phone is going to go right in the middle here. It uses a spring-loaded system. This is the Google Pixel 7 Pro, and it fits in here really nicely. And actually, we've got a little more room, so something like the Red Magic 7 Pro would also fit inside of this device. Now, real quick, I wanted to give you a rundown on connecting this. Like I mentioned, there are a couple different ways. Basically, we're going to head to our Bluetooth settings. If you power the unit up, we're going to get that second LED blinking. And if we hold that button for about 5 seconds, we're going to get that rapid blink. Now it's in Bluetooth pairing mode, but we're in D input mode. And yeah, we could connect this to our Android device, and if you wanted to use it with emulators where we can totally map the controller, then it'll work out just fine. But really, when it comes down to it, using this in X input mode is definitely the way to go on Android. That way, Android games that natively support controllers will detect this, and it's automatically going to be mapped for us. And in order to get into X input mode, what we're going to do is power the controller off, hold RB, and then hold that power button. Now you can see that we've got 2 of those LEDs blinking, and it's going to show up as an Xbox wireless controller. So it's going to be running in X input mode. And in X input mode, we can actually navigate the full operating system. So if you wanted to install one of your favorite emulation front ends like Launchbox or something, we can actually navigate the front end without having to map any of the controller buttons on this thing. So the first thing I wanted to take a look at here were the dead zones on the analog sticks, and to my surprise, it has less than some of the more expensive controllers that we've tested on the channel. This really isn't that bad given the price of this thing. I've got a third-party joystick tester app installed. It has nothing to do with the controller manufacturer whatsoever, so there's no gimmicky stuff going on here. And obviously, we've got a little bit of a dead zone here with both of these analog sticks, but it's very minute. And, I've tested some iPega controllers in the past that did cost a bit more than this here with way more dead zone than this. And the overall feel of the analog sticks is a bit lighter than some of the higher end controllers, but that's kind of a given here. Moving over to some game testing, we've got Minecraft, and this is one of those games that just works with controllers. And as you can see, with this Pixel 7 Pro, we've still got a lot of room here to add a larger phone inside of this device. And with this game here, along with like Asphalt 9, Real Racing, a lot of the native Android games that do support controllers, it's just automatically going to detect it. I didn't have to do any kind of mapping or go into the settings and enable it. And another thing that was actually surprising was this works with Call of Duty Mobile and Apex Legends. If you're familiar with those games and controllers on Android, most of the time you're kind of stuck with the first-party PlayStation or Xbox controller, but this does work without a third-party mapping app. I think they've come up with a way to kind of trick Android into thinking that this is a real Xbox controller with whatever kind of Bluetooth driver they're using here, because as we saw, when we connect it in X input mode, it does detect it as a wireless Xbox controller and not, by the brand's name or anything like that. And of course, if you needed to do any kind of sensitivity adjustment, you can do it directly from the settings of this game here. I'm just kind of using the out-of-box experience, and it's really not that bad. Another thing I always like to do when I take a look at these controllers is test out the D-pad, but I actually don't even want to call this a D-pad because we've basically got the same exact buttons over here that we do for the A, B, X, and Y, and it's going to make it really hard to pull those special moves off. Now, if you just needed to go side to side, up and down for like a platformer or something like that, then those buttons are going to work. The Nintendo Switch uses this separated layout, but they are a bit closer, so you can slide a bit better. But you're going to be much better off just using the analog stick with fighting games. So if you're just into fighting games, this is a controller that I would probably stay away from. And by the way, this is Redream, the Dreamcast emulator, and I didn't have to do any kind of mapping. I wanted to test out a couple more emulators with this controller, and here we have PSP using PPSSPP, and just like Redream, no mapping was required. So yeah, if you wanted to use this for the Dolphin emulator running GameCube and Wii games, you can go ahead and map it directly from the app itself. RetroArch will already have this set up as an Xbox controller, along with a lot of other emulators that you can download from the Play Store or sideload. Here's some PS2 with Ether SX2, and one thing I'm actually really not liking here is the select button is way down at the bottom, so if I want to change views or just go to that select button, I have to take my hand completely off the left analog stick, and for racing games, that can be a bit cumbersome. Okay, so yeah, I've actually been using this for the last couple days, and overall it's not a bad controller given the price. If you can get this for under $20 and you're not looking to spend $50 to $100 on a telescopic controller for your Android device, then this will get you by. It's not a super bad deal, but it's not a top-of-the-line controller. Basically, a non-existent D-pad, so if you're into fighting games and absolutely have to have a D-pad, then I would stay away from this one. You can get by with using the analog sticks. Non-linear triggers, which do help out, in my opinion, with racing games. Some games and emulators do take advantage of those, but we've just got basically on or off here. And the analog sticks are a bit lighter, but the dead zones really aren't that bad. I'd say for under 20 bucks, it's actually not a bad controller. Again, it's not a top-of-the-line controller. You really can't compare this with the $50 to the $100 controllers because this can be had for around $15 on AliExpress using one of their coupons. I think this would be great if you're looking to put together a really cheap Android-based emulation device using a used phone or maybe even a super cheap prepaid phone. But don't go into one of these expecting to get the same kind of performance that you will out of a higher end controller. I mean, we don't have Hall sensors here, we don't have analog triggers, but for what it is, under 20 bucks, I think it's pretty decent. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. If you're interested in learning more, maybe picking one of these up, I will leave a few links in the description. They do have several different colors to choose from. And like always, thanks for watching.